Bonjour, bienvenue en salle de presse pour notre rendez-vous quotidien virtuel et en direct sur EBS. Nous sommes aujourd'hui le jeudi 10 septembre. Je commence par une annonce sur l'agenda de la présidente von der Leyen. Celle-ci recevra ce soir M. Jens Stoltenberg, secrétaire général de l'OTAN, pour un dîner de travail. Ensuite, Madame la Présidente a présidé hier la première réunion du comité de pilotage de la Task Force pour la relance et la résilience, avec la participation des 3 vice-présidents exécutifs, Franz Timmermans, Margrethe Vestager et Valdis Dombrovskis, ainsi que du commissaire Paolo Gentiloni. Ils ont discuté de la manière dont le comité de pilotage, qui rendra compte au collège des commissaires, fournira l'orientation politique nécessaire à la Task Force pour mener à bien ses travaux. La Task Force aide les États membres à élaborer des plans de relance et de résilience qui visent à rendre l'Europe plus verte, plus numérique et son économie plus robuste. Je passe maintenant la parole à Johannes pour une annonce sur le code de bonne pratique contre la désinformation.
Merci beaucoup, Eric. Today, we present our assessment of the Code of Practice on Disinformation. As you know, the code is the first framework worldwide which is setting out self-commitments for online platforms and social media companies to fight disinformation. The assessment shows that this approach can indeed effectively help the fight against disinformation, but it also identified some shortcomings. The lessons learned from this assessment will be used now to show the way forward. Essentially, we need even more efforts from the signatories. We need more accountability and more transparency. The Commission will soon take further steps to address the issues raised by disinformation, notably in 2 upcoming landmark proposals. One is the Digital Services Act, and the other one is the European Democracy Action Plan. Furthermore, today we also published the first set of reports from online platforms, and this is Google, Facebook, Twitter, Microsoft, Mozilla, and TikTok, on their actions against coronavirus-related disinformation. This kicks off a monthly reporting and monitoring mechanism, which was to which we committed in the 10th of June communication, joint communication on disinformation in the COVID-19 context. And we have more information in our daily news and in the press release, which is online.
Thank you very much, Johannes. This brings our announcement to a close. We're now ready to take your questions, and I pass the floor to Athanasio.
Thanks very much, Eric. Bonjour. The focus is on Moria. The Vice President is going there. The situation is complex, but one thing remains the same. How sure are we that the taxpayers' money, European money, is properly used and has been properly used over the last 5 years, not only in Moria, not only in the specific theater of operations, but also in the wider context of the migration response in Greece? How do we audit this situation? How do we audit how the money is spent? And did you know that some of the recipients of the European taxpayers' money do not actually accept EU audit? I have recently learned that the UNHCR, for instance, when it gets the European contributions, they classify it as voluntary contributions, and they do not accept EU audit at all, even when you try to do it. So since yesterday, I asked the Commissioner Ylva Johansson, on the spot outside the Merlimon about the misuse of funds, and she told me, "We're not sure. I wouldn't use the word misused," she said. But how can we be sure if we cannot audit? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will first pass the floor to Adalbert on this issue.
Thank you very much, Eric. In general terms, the use of EU migration funds in Greece under the Greek national program is very closely monitored by the Commission which is done in line with the applicable EU rules, and that includes thorough analysis of annual accounts. It's through implementation reports and through also regular monitoring, including daily contacts at technical level, regular reporting, and also visits on the spot. In addition, together with the Greek authorities, we have set up an annual financial plan to monitor the implementation of EU funds, and that applies both to the national program and to the emergency assistance. So this is with the support of experts and of staff in Greece. In the implementation of funds is also monitoring through regular steering committees that take place in Athens with the participation of all the involved stakeholders. And in case there is any ineligible expenditure that is detected, the Commission has the obligation to cover any misspent resources. And then to refer specifically to your question about audit, the Commission, of course, carries out ex post audits as part of its standard control strategy, as well as monitoring missions. And in case of any allegations of fraud or misuse of EU funds, OLAF, so the European Anti-Fraud Office, is there to be responsible to conduct investigations. So there is a very clear way of operating in terms of audit and financial control that the Commission applies to all this considerable assistance that is provided in Greece. And then specifically as regards UNHCR, when the Commission spends European money through international organizations, there are specific rules that apply because we can rely in part on the internal control systems of international organizations in order to conduct parts of the work related to financial control and reporting. And this is also very much in line with applicable EU rules. So overall, the funding is very, very much controlled, regardless of the way it is spent.
Thank you, Adalbert. So let me stress this. When we sign a financing agreement with an international organization like UNHCR, it's not simply that we say, here's the EU money, we accept the fact that there will not be any EU controls. We only do so because in our financial agreements with them, it is clearly set out that they have mechanisms in place to control the use of EU funds. And obviously, there should not be double work when it comes to controls, and this has to be done with the proper procedures and the proper rigor as we would apply it in the European Commission. I understand you have a follow-up, Athanasios.
That is correct. I have a follow-up. Letting aside the issue of audits, do you think that after 5 years, because Moria was an emergency 2015 and 2016, it's not an emergency anymore, it's 6 years that the situation is there. Greece received 2.21 billion euro for all that stuff. Was that the best that they could do? Seriously, was it the best that they could do with all that money to have that slums that were burned down in the night after 5 years of an emergency situation? So of course we have audits, okay, but was that the best that they could do? Thank you.
Adalbert.
Thank you, Athanasios. You raise a very broad question of the management of this particular situation, including through spending of European funds. And maybe what I can recall is that the situation has been very complex for a pretty long period of time on the Greek islands, and we have been doing our absolute best as Commission to support the Greek authorities in managing this situation, including in particular not only through financial assistance but also operational help on the ground, and working with the Greek authorities to accelerate the procedures that take place in these reception centers in order to avoid people being stuck in there while the procedures are pending. And this has been very, complex work, including also advising the Greek government on changes to the Greek asylum law, which has also borne a lot of fruit. And I think a very important thing to recall is that the population or the number of residents in the camp in Moria has more than halved over the last 6 months, from over to 25,000 people in March to only around 12,000 as of yesterday. So we've been working very closely with the Greek authorities, and our efforts have been bearing fruit over the last months in particular.
Thank you. Are there other questions on this issue? Only keep your hand raised, please, if you have questions on the issue of the situation in Moria and more generally the issue of refugees and migration. Okay, I see a certain number of hands raised. David, you have the floor.
Thank you, Eric. David Carretta, Radio Radicale. A question to Adalbert. Can you clarify how much money has been given to Greece from 2014 until today to manage the situation? And a more political question to you, Eric. Does the president still think that Greece is the shield of Europe on migration? Thank you.
Adalbert.
Thank you, David. The total amount stands at over 2.6 billion euro at present, as of so from 2015 onwards, and we publish a very detailed breakdown of the way these funds are spent, and in particular the emergency funding, on our website. So I'm very happy to send you a link if you need it.
On your political, David, the president has always been very clear on the fact that the European Union and its member states are faced with a double challenge, one which is of managing as best as possible the migration flows towards Europe, and secondly, dealing according to our principles and our legislation with the migrants that are on the European territory. She has spared no efforts in her political guidelines and in her work since then to ensure that we can move forward on the agenda of migration, and as you know, we will be coming forward with proposals in this area in the near future. Let us continue on this issue if there are more questions. Sarantis, you have a question on this issue.
Yes, good morning. I was just wondering, does the European Commission feel that has any kind of political or moral responsibility regarding what happened in Moria, considering that the migration pact has been delayed for a long time now, and we still don't have a clear timeline when it's going to be pushed forward?
The European Union has been addressing this issue for a much longer time than the current Commission's mandate. Proposals had been put on the table years ago, and there have been discussions in the Council, on this, and how to move the policy, the legislation proposed forward. As you know, we will be coming forward with a proposal soon. In fact, if you look at the liste des points prévus, which is published, you will see that it is foreseen now for the coming weeks. As always in these situations, it is extremely important that when we come forward with legislation, with a proposal, we do so based on a good understanding of what must be achieved and what can be achieved. And therefore, the time which is spent preparing legislation is not time which is lost or wasted. It is time that will allow us then not to face the sort of situation that we faced before, where there are blockages that cannot be overcome. Let me stress that point. Preparing legislation is an extremely important political process to ensure the success of this legislation afterwards. Let's continue on this subject. If there are more questions, I pass the floor to Elisa. Elisa, you have the floor.
Voilà, donc vous m'entendez?
Bonjour Elisa, nous t'entendons.
Bonjour, c'est pas sur la migration, mais c'est sur en fait sur la méthodologie de la Commission concernant la levée des restrictions pour les voyages non essentiels concernant les pays tiers. Donc je peux quand même poser ma question?
Désolé, si tu permets, on va revenir vers toi après. Je voudrais que nous terminions sur le thème des événements à Moria et plus généralement les questions migration. Y a-t-il d'autres questions sur ce sujet? Je vois encore deux mains levées. Joseph. Joseph, you have the floor. Please press speak. Make sure you have the right channel for your microphone. It should be okay, but we cannot hear you. So try to sort out your technical problem, and in the meantime, we will move to David Herschenhorn. David, you have the floor.
Thanks, Eric. Following up on a similar theme, I wonder if the Commission has a sense of why these folks were still in this camp at the time the fire broke out. If there had been a migration pact, are these people who would be eligible for relocation, or are these people still there because they're not eligible for asylum and they are awaiting expulsion, essentially returns? Can you give us a sense of why? I know there's been a lot of work, as Commissioner Johansson has said, in reducing those numbers, but what's the Commission's best assessment, if you could give us, of why in 2020 there are still thousands of people living for long periods of time in a refugee camp on EU soil? Because that just seems incongruous with all the other functioning of the EU as a beacon of modernity and democracy.
Thank you, David. I pass the floor to Adalbert.
Thank you, David. So there's of course lots of complex reasons why the tough situation on the islands has been the way it is. But broadly speaking, from our perspective, what we've been insisting on for a long time is that the key to solving this situation is accelerating the procedures that relate to migration management. So indeed, getting to a point where either the people there would be recognized as refugees, and therefore then they would acquire a certain number of rights and could just get on with their lives, or alternatively, as in many cases of these people, they would be determined as ineligible to stay on in the European Union, and then would need to be returned swiftly. And as you certainly know, there have been issues with different steps of these different processes, and this, in spite of a lot of the operational help that EU agencies have been able to provide, and in spite of work with the Greek authorities in order to improve the systems that they have in place and the laws that they have. Now, in terms of the link to EU policy as such, I think you will not be surprised that the new pact on migration and asylum, that, as Eric was saying, is now in the liste des points prévus for the 30th of September, will also look at the issue of the speed of procedures in order to make sure that people are not stuck in a limbo for long periods of time.
Thank you, Adalbert. Let me remind you that the agenda of the college is confirmed after the meeting of the heads of cabinet that precedes the college meeting of that particular week. Okay, Joseph. Oh, David, you have a follow-up.
Yeah, if I could just for Adalbert, maybe to make it a simpler question, because that was very helpful on a bigger picture policy perspective. Is the Commission aware of even a survey of of the roughly estimated 12,500 people that the Greek authorities have said were affected by this fire? Of those, how many are potentially legitimate asylum seekers, and how many are simply awaiting return? Are you aware of any such survey, either by the Greek government or by the EU or by private NGOs of any sort? Do we have a handle on just practically who those people are and what future is in store for them? Thank you.
Adalbert.
Thank you, David. Of course, we work very closely with the Greek authorities on this issue. So we do have data on the population of the camp in terms of both status and also nationality and gender and age, etc., etc. Now, of course, we cannot determine whether somebody is a refugee until the asylum procedure is over. This is the very point of the asylum process. But indeed, the population includes both people who are still awaiting an asylum decision and also people who are awaiting return. So if you allow me, I would perhaps get back to you if you need further the specific breakdown of this, so that I have time to consult with the experts.
Thank you. Let me move now to Marina, if it is a question on this.
Sorry, it's not on this. It's on Serbia-Kosovo dialogue.
No, then hold on, because are there other questions on migration? I do not see any, so let us go back to the question on the management of borders, of external borders, restrictions related to essential travel. Elisa, yes, it was you, thanks. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Eric. Well, that's a question for Adalbert, actually. Adalbert, within the methodology of the Commission, the main criteria defined for lifting the non-essential travel restriction for third countries is to have an European average of 16 infections per 100,000 inhabitants. Now, we have epidemiologists from the Western Balkan countries that consider that this criteria is disproportionate and unfair to the population of very small countries. In the Western Balkans, you have countries with, the majority of them is around 3 million. So you have Albania, Kosovo, North Macedonia, Bosnia, Montenegro, around 3 million, compared to gigantic countries like Australia, Canada, India, China. And the question here is, would it be really fair to continue to apply this criteria to those small countries, knowing that beyond that they have a European perspective, they are not like the others? Would the Commission be ready to reconsider, to see that 16 cases of infection per 100,000 of inhabitants cannot apply to the same, for small countries and big countries? And have you received complaint about that? Thank you.
Adalbert.
Thank you very much for this question. So let me maybe make a couple of points. First of all, this is the criteria that are used are not only the Commission's criteria. They are based on the Commission proposal, but they have been adopted by the Council, and it is the Council applying these criteria also in practice to each specific country. So in terms of how these criteria are applied, I would perhaps rather refer you to the Council to ask your question. In terms of whether we have received any complaints about this specific criterion from the angle that you referred to, I have to say that in principle, no, and from what I understand, the reason why the criterion is framed as a number of cases per unit of population is precisely to to neutralize the effect of the size of a specific country that it would apply to. However, again, I would rather refer you to the Council for explanations on this criterion and how it is applied. And also, I would like to stress that this is not the only criterion that is there in the Council recommendation. There is also a criterion relating to the trend, for example, or to the overall response to the pandemic in a specific country, taking into account all the available information. So it is not a blunt criterion, and there is a certain margin of maneuver that the Council can apply in order to take into account specific situations.
Thank you, Adalbert. Are there other questions, related to the issue of the management of external borders? You have Elisa, a short follow-up.
Yeah, I have a quick follow-up. So just to be sure, Commission cannot do anything about that. It's just up to the member states now, even though the recommendation came from the Commission and the other European agency.
I think that Adalbert has been very clear that the ball is in the court of the Council, Elisa. So the answer is, this is the state of play. So, are there other questions related to management of external borders? Only keep your hand raised if it is related to this. Joseph, I know your question is related to something else. We will come back to you. Abdullah, is it related to the issue of management of external borders? If so, go ahead. You do not have the right source for your microphone, I understand. Yes, you do. Go ahead. Is it on this? Hello? Yes?
Hello.
Yes, Abdullah. Is your question on the management of external borders of the EU? No, I'm sorry, you cannot hear us apparently. So we will cut and continue. Jonathan, merci. Okay, we change subject now and we go back to the question raised by Joseph first. Joseph, have you sorted out your microphone problem? Go ahead. It seems not. However, I have your question in writing. It is for Christian Wiegand, and it is the following. There's a vote scheduled in the Danish Parliament on a bill proposing to ban ritual circumcision. This would be a threat to the very important Jewish ritual. What is the position of the Commission on this issue? Christian. Though I hasten to say, as you know, Joseph, that we do not comment on proposals for bills, usually. Christian.
Yes, indeed. So what I can say on this is that, as Eric just said, let me start by making clear that we cannot comment on draft laws. More generally, the Commission is committed to defend the freedom of religion or belief, both within the European Union and abroad. Similarly, we are engaged in the fight against all forms of discrimination and in the protection of the rights of the child. While religious circumcision does not fall within the scope of EU law, EU member states must ensure that all fundamental rights at stake, including the right to manifest and practice religion or belief, are effectively respected and protected in line with national law and international obligations.
Thank you very much. I go back to the question by Abdullah, which was indeed on the question of travel restrictions. Is the list going to be updated anytime soon? It has not been updated since August. Adelbert, I give you the floor, but I think that the answer is that it is up to the Council to decide when it wants to update the list. But go ahead.
That is indeed correct. The issue is regularly on the agenda of Coreper in particular, which is the body that typically takes a look at these issues. And indeed, in the last instances where it was discussed, it was decided that the list would not be changed. But I would indeed send you to the Council for questions about the schedule.
Okay, thank you very much. We now move on to other subjects, and I know that Catherine has been asking for the floor for a long time. Thank you, Christian. Catherine, you have the floor.
Hello. Eric, thank you. I know you don't normally comment on proposals or bills, but you did make an exception yesterday on the internal market bill, which the UK is proposing and that hadn't yet been published. But you were helped somewhat by the Secretary of State announcing in the Houses of Parliament that he fully intended to break the law. My question is, what is the Commission's response now? Can you launch an infringement procedure immediately, or do you have to wait for this bill to become an act of Parliament?
Thank you, Catherine. Actually, we were helped by the fact that there is something called the withdrawal agreement on which we can base our comments and which is the basis for our relationship with the United Kingdom. So that was indeed very helpful in that context. Dan, you have the floor.
Hi, Catherine, and if I could just follow up on what Eric said, the President tweeted after the bill had been published, so of course we had seen it at that point. No, you have seen, of course, all of the statements that we made yesterday. You know well that we are very concerned about the internal market bill and the intentions of the British government to breach the withdrawal agreement. You know that for that reason we called for an extraordinary meeting of the Joint Committee. That meeting will take place in just under 2 hours, at around 1 o'clock UK time. So there's not much that I can say now at this point, but we can provide a readout, of course, after that meeting.
Thank you very much. Are there other questions related to this issue? Naomi, Catherine, you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I do have a follow-up, just a broader question in a sense that, as you say, Eric, it's in breach of the withdrawal agreement, but there are other agreements that the UK will have to have with the EU in future. And what this bill made clear is that it's not, that it gives a very lengthy list of everything that the UK is prepared to override, including conventions. And of course, the European Convention of Human Rights comes to mind. And I mean, in terms of offering a country data adequacy, for example, you would expect that country to have a bulletproof relationship with the European Convention of Rights, I imagine. So, I mean, are you looking at other agreements that the EU will have with the UK in future? Or is it too early to say that?
Dan.
Thanks, Catherine. In general, and I would repeat just what I said there, the meeting is going to take place now in just under 2 hours. Maro Šefčovič is going to represent the EU. He's the co-chair in the Joint Committee. We will, of course, be asking for information from the UK on this. I'm not going to delve into all the different details right now. You know our position. Our position has been very clear on this this week. You know that the full and timely implementation of the withdrawal agreement is a prerequisite for any future partnership with us. And I think I'd leave it there.
Thank you. I give the floor to Naomi. Naomi, go ahead. You seem to be having problems with your system. No. Yes? Oops. Naomi, press speak.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes. Oh, good. Okay, thanks. Thank you for taking the question. It's a follow-up really to Catherine's first question. Can you just please run through, as a matter of fact, what arbitration options are there in case of a breach of the withdrawal agreement? Thank you.
Naomi, all of that information is publicly available on the Commission's website, and you can make Dan dance as many Kayleys as you want. We are going to refer you to the written text, which is available online. We are focused for the moment on the fact that there is a meeting which is going to take place, during which clarifications will be sought from the European Union, from the UK government, and we will express our views following that meeting in a written statement. I now move to Louise. Sorry, okay. Louise, I don't see your hand up anymore, so we move to David, if it's on this issue.
Yes, it is on this issue. Thank you, Eric. Just to know if there will be a press conference by Michel Barnier after his meeting with David Frost today. And the second question, beside the internal market law, the British government presented the new approach on subsidies, which states that there will be further legislation to remove redundant EU state aid rules from the statute book. I'm wondering if this is something important to you, if and when the issue of the internal market law will be solved, could be an obstacles to have a free trade agreement. Thank you.
Hi, David. Indeed, Michel Barnier will be meeting with David Frost this afternoon around 2 o'clock UK time. You will see, of course, the agenda that we had in the negotiations this week. In terms of press events afterwards, I think the plan for the moment is that we will issue a written statement, but so keep an eye out for that and stay tuned. On your second question, I wouldn't have any particular comment to make on the announcements by the UK yesterday. Of course, you know that a level playing field is one of the key issues in the negotiations right now. You can assume that this was raised during the negotiations, but as the negotiations are ongoing, as I speak, I'm not going to comment further on that, so please stay tuned until after the negotiations end today.
Thank you. Raf, you have a question on this issue as well. Go ahead.
Yes, I do. I was just looking at the withdrawal agreement, and also, and if you look at the arbitration and all the articles on that, it seems to me that everything can be kicked down the road far beyond the January 1 deadline before we have a full ruling on what's at stake today. And I was just wondering that I mean, are you willing to take political action before you have a full answer from the full legal process of the arbitration?
Raf, I think we've made our views very clear. We are going to take this step by step. We have, through the voice of the President, made our views very clear on the importance that we give to the withdrawal agreement as the basis for our relations with the United Kingdom when it comes to the withdrawal, and of the protocol when it comes in particular to the issues related to Ireland and Northern Ireland. Today, we have, Vice President Šefčovič is traveling to London, is in fact in London now, and will meet Michael Gove in order to seek clarifications. We are going to wait for those clarifications before we analyze the state of play, the situation, and draw the possible consequences on the next steps to be taken. In parallel, we continue to have negotiations with the United Kingdom, and as was noted, Michel Barnier is in London today, and we will go no further than that at this stage. Let me now move to David Hasselhoff. David, you have the floor again.
Just a quick Brexit question. We all remember when former President Juncker said that he hoped to keep his focus on Brexit to a half hour a week. And I wonder if at this stage you can say if
that's what happens when questions relate to former commissions in this press room. I think we got the gist of your question. Nevertheless, David, I think it's fair to say that the issue of the relationship with the United Kingdom has, at least this week, been taking up somewhat more than half an hour of the President's time, and indeed of our collective time. Thank you. I open the floor now to other issues, since I see no further hand raised on this, and we now go to Marina. Thank you for your patience, Marina. Go ahead. Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Eric. So I have two questions, and it both concerns actually enlargement. First one is on the Belgrade-Pristina dialogue. I would like to know if maybe Peter can clarify the last round of the dialogue the last week. Did both parties open the issue of association of the Serbian communities? And since he announced that it will be on the non-majority agreements, and he could not clarify at that moment what does this mean. And since yesterday Mr. Lajčák said that it's high time to end this process successfully, where does Mr. Lajčák see this optimism in resolving concrete this question of associated Serbian communities when for 7 years stuck at one point? So this is the first question. And the second one is on a military issue, so I can answer it, ask it later.
Thank you, Marina. Peter, you have the floor.
Thank you, Marina. Good afternoon to all. Well, indeed, the arrangements for non-majority communities are now on the table, on the agenda of the current negotiations or discussions between the experts. It was announced, it was opened, and I wouldn't go beyond what we announced, elaborating on the details, just to leave the process to continue. I can only add that the association was actually the vehicle which was found in 2013 to address the needs for the Kosovo Serb non-majority community. And now, as part of the negotiations of one comprehensive agreement, it is essential to also address overall arrangements for non-majority community. That's all I can say on this issue, and I will not go beyond that because, as I said, the talks on this will proceed. The second thing on remarks by Mr. Lajčák, what he stated, I think it's very obvious, and that's the position of the whole EU, and that was the rationale and the argumentation of the EU behind pushing for the resumption of the dialogue. It is high time to tackle all the issues. It is high time to find mutually agreeable solutions that would result in a legally binding agreement on the normalization of the relations. So, of course, this was supposed to happen already a long time ago, but we are trying, and as the EU, we are facilitating dialogue exactly with this in mind, to bring these issues to a successful solution. And that's why the position of the EU that it is high time to solve it, and it would be preferable, and that's our wish, desire, and aim, to have these talks concluded as soon as it gets. But again, it depends on both parties to find the mutually agreeable solutions that are resulting in a legally binding agreement on the normalization of their relations.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Peter. Marina, you have a related question on military issues, or is it on a completely different subject? Marina, you have the floor.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so my question is regarding the decision of Serbia to withdraw from all the military exercise with all the partners from East or from the West after alleged pressure from the EU side. Can you clarify, Peter, what kind of pressure came from EU side? Because we know that Serbia is a military neutral country, and this exercise regarding Belarus that actually was the problem here. was already going on for several years, and everything was fine till now. So what is happening right now at this point?
Thank you. I understand that this question would be for Anna.
Hi, do you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so thanks for your question, Marina. I think that it is very clear that, in line with the negotiating framework for Serbia, Serbia is actually expected to progressively align, as you very well know, its policies towards third countries with those policies and positions that have been adopted by the European Union. And I think that what we can say is that we've in the recent EU declaration on Belarus, we've welcomed very much Serbia's alignment to this declaration, and as an active participating country in several EU common and security and defense missions, we very much welcome Serbia's high quality contribution to these missions. So I think that this is what we can say. And we can just only insist that Serbia has actually identified EU integration as the country's strategic priority and needs to act in line with this commitment.
Thank you, Anna. Are there other questions related to the Serbia-Kosovo dialogue or more generally the Western Balkan? Eriza, your hand is raised. I assume it is the case. Yes, go ahead.
Yes. Yes, it is the case. Thank you, Eric, again. It's a question for Peter, again, on Serbia and Kosovo dialogue. In the joint statement of the Prime Minister of Kosovo and President of Serbia before the meeting in Brussels, there is an issue that the two parties, the documents agreed by the two parties in Washington, they can contribute as a useful contribution to a final comprehensive agreement between the two parties. And the question here is, what are those elements of those documents agreed in Washington that can contribute to a final solution? Because we can see, for example, Serbia now did not consider to open an embassy in Jerusalem, which is a part of these documents. Thank you.
Peter.
Thank you, Eriza. I will be very brief because when it comes to the documents signed in White House last week, and when it comes to the text of the joint declaration by President Vučić and Prime Minister Hoti, these are bilateral acts done by them. So it's best to address these questions to them. What we are aiming for as the EU is to make sure that we continue facilitating the dialogue on the normalization, reaching the final legally binding agreement, tackling all the open issues, and making sure that everything what feeds into this process and is taken on board of this process is in line with EU acquis and with international law.
Thank you, Peter. Are there questions for us on other issues today? David.
Oui, une dernière fois, merci Eric. C'est justement pour Peter. I think that you have seen the tweet of the President of the European Council, Charles Michel, asking for a speed up of the process on sanction against Belarus. I'm wondering when those sanctions will be adopted, since the issue is not if but when, and who is blocking the adoption of the sanction? Thank you.
Thank you, David. Well, the tweet of the President of the Council, I think, is expression at the highest European level of the determination to make sure that what happened in Belarus will not go unanswered in terms of concrete measures which were announced and agreed by the foreign ministers who gave the light to working groups of the council to start the necessary work. So there is a highest political determination to have these sanctions prepared, agreed, and when it will be done when the member states find consensus on the scope and the nature of these sanctions. And as I was explaining over the last few days, the work is still ongoing, and there is a political will, political decision, and political determination to have this work done as soon as it gets. But on details, on individual positions of the member states and speculation in the media, what is happening within this process, you know, our long-standing practice that we are not commenting on ongoing processes and discussions, internal discussions among the member states in the working formations of the Council.
Thank you, Peter. Are there other questions for Peter or Nabila on external relations? I do not see any, so we close the external relations chapter, and I give the floor to Tommaso.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you for taking my question. Tommaso Gallavotti at Kronos Italy. It's just a question on banking, if I may, because in Italy, the CEO of Mediobanca, Alberto Nagel, Mediobanca is an Italian merchant bank, maybe the best one we have in the country, said that the new rules on the new European rules on NPLs, on provisioning, are wrong and risk to prove to be pro-cyclical because they treat dubious credits as dead credits. And he said that they might be harmful during the recovery for the foreseen and hopefully we'll see it, a recovery from the present crisis. I wonder if the Commission is reflecting on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm looking to Dan to see if he has any information on this, but no, I think that we need to look into this issue more in detail. So, Tommaso, if we have elements to provide you with, we will come back to you bilaterally on this. Are there other issues for us today? I do not see any hand raised, so I will now close this midday briefing. Merci beaucoup à tous pour votre participation et à demain.